there's this experience of moral injury that veterans will have when they're engaged in occupations that is as distinct from PTSD as we sort of commonly understand it. There's this idea that trauma is the result of being engaged in very violent situations or seeing a comrade die or be hurt, but moral injury is causing trauma in veterans and leading to suicide in veterans on account of the fact that they are involved in perpetrating things that go against their own moral code and moral center. And so to look at trauma through this lens is to look at it, by implication as a critique of war itself. So that's really what fundamentally is different about the film, and also just in the fact of the way it was made, because it's a narrative film, but it also involves veterans portraying themselves and contributing their own improvisation, their own artwork, poetry, music. So it's a narrative structure with scripted characters, but all throughout the film are Vietnam veterans, Iraq veterans, and veterans of Afghanistan who are participating.
What did they have in mind? Can you give us a glimpse into what motivated the veterans who worked with you to do that, to help make such a film?
Well, I think that we're excited about the fact that finally here was a movie that was from the get-go trying to do something that they had never seen before in a movie about veterans, that was not approved by the DoD, that didn't have officers as advisors on the movie. I mean, most war movies that are produced by the system have approval. The DoD has approval of the script, and they give script notes and all these kinds of things. And so we were avoiding all of that. We're very under the radar. And I promised that we were going to get this all the way to the finish line without compromising what the film was trying to do and without changing their stories or sanitizing any of it. And we've managed to do that. So I think that was really a huge part of what was the motivator for all of us, especially for them. There's this very clear connection between the Vietnam era veterans, their experiences, and Iraq and Afghanistan. And this is as distinct from World War II veterans. And I'll explain that if I can. There's a quote in the film. A veteran says, look, World War II veterans didn't come home and kill themselves in these kind of numbers. They had a clear mission. They knew why they were fighting. And the veteran goes on to say that, he very quickly realized in Iraq that he didn't know why he was fighting. There was nothing there for him to believe in. And I think what this points to is that there's this lineage from Vietnam forward of our wars being specifically occupations. And that moral injury is a very distinct component of an occupation, as opposed to a war with a little bit more clarity of purpose like World War II, had. I don't know if that's,
No, that's very, because for people like me, who was not part of a veteran of these wars, it is also very clear that World War II had a rationale that people could discuss and understand, and a buildup with nothing comparable happening in Vietnam and the other, just a completely different situation. And it would have been naive to imagine that the man or the woman who's there on the scene wouldn't pick up that difference as well. There's a moment in the trailer, which I have looked at, where a soldier refers to himself as a pawn. I found that very arresting. Is that a general sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly can't speak for the veteran community at large. It's as diverse as any other community you could look at. But to the veterans who were involved in this film, as we were developing it, there's this constant refrain, an echo of something that kept hearing them express in different ways all the time. And this was the idea that they were used and discarded and left behind and betrayed and lied to. And it all just sort of came down to this. Their anti-war position kind of came down ultimately to this realization that they were just a very small part of a much larger system that needed them to function in a certain way, and needed them to have that experience. And they needed meat for the grinder, essentially, for the system to continue. And once the veteran understood themselves in that context, the internal burden kind of shifted for them. Because it becomes a collective burden at that point, right? It doesn't become one person's individual problem, which is, of course, the thing that primarily leads to suicide. It becomes a more collective understanding of what's happening here.
I told them my story. You just didn't get it.
I was a pawn.
Show me how to f***ing live.
Nothing about this is easy, okay?